Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 13 Pro Max are the largest size of Apple's flagship phones. So I wanted to help you decide if you want to update from the iPhone 12 Pro Max to the 13 Pro Max, or maybe upgrade just to the 12 Pro Max. Now, the first thing to note is that Apple no longer sells the 12 Pro Max new. It's not available in Apple stores or on their website new, but it is available through authorized retailers, and you may be able to find different discounts there. But Apple discontinued this model this year, and instead, we now just have the 13 Pro Max. Now, as far as the price is concerned, year over year, they're identical, but there's an additional storage option for the iPhone 13 Pro Max. So last year, with the 12 Pro Max, you had the option of 128 gigabytes, 256 gigabytes, or 512 gigabytes. This year, the iPhone 13 Pro Max adds an additional option for 1 terabyte, which brings it from $1,099 at the lowest storage size all the way up to $1,599 for the top of the line model with the most storage. Now, as far as the colors this year, you can see the two major differences. Here on the left, the 12 Pro Max, I have Pacific Blue. They've replaced that this year on the 13 Pro Max with Sierra Blue. So all of the other color options are the same: gold, graphite, and silver. There's no differences there. As far as the overall build, the build of them is the same as well. They're both using stainless steel around the outside edge. You can see it's a polished stainless steel, and they're both using ceramic shield on the front to protect the phone. And ceramic shield does seem to hold up well. After an entire year of use on the 12 Pro Max, I have one small scratch here where I actually dropped this onto a metal tripod and it scratched it. Otherwise, I don't have a single deep scratch or anything on the 12 Pro Max. The same glass is used in both of them, and it holds up really well. If you're not using a screen protector or anything else, or a case, it still seems to hold up much better than previous years, but it's the same on both phones as far as that goes. Now, the overall size of the phones is very similar this year as well. There is a slight thickness difference on the 13 Pro Max where it's 0.30 inches or 7.65 millimeters versus the 12 Pro Max that's 0.29 inches or 7.4 millimeters. It's a very slight difference, but there is a difference. And there's also a weight difference between the two that's noticeable when I'm holding them in my hands. 8.46 ounces or 240 grams for the new phone, 8.03 ounces or 228 grams for the 12 Pro Max. So very similar, but you definitely can feel the weight difference in the new phone. Now, you may have already noticed on the display of the phone, they look very similar, but the notch is a little bit different. The notch has been narrowed on the 13 Pro Max. However, it's been deepened into the display a little bit, which means when you're watching video in 18:9 ultra widescreen or widescreen like this video, it could cut into the notch a little bit. And I can show you that here. Now, on the displays, here's one of my videos, and the top phone is the 13 Pro Max. Now, in some videos, I've actually seen the notch protrude into some of the content on YouTube. Now, YouTube could have shrunk the video ever so slightly to fix this problem, but it was definitely there the other day when I first took a look at it. So it may vary from content to content, or it could be something they fixed, but because the notch is a little bit deeper, it does protrude into some content from time to time, but here I'm just not seeing it. Now, the displays are the exact same size, 6.7 inches, 2,778 by 1,284, with 458 pixels per inch. But this year, it goes up to 1,000 nits with normal brightness. So when you're outside, it definitely makes a difference. As you can see here, the screen is a little bit brighter on the 13 Pro Max compared to the 12 Pro Max. So it does help outdoors a little bit. So 1,000 nits normal brightness and the same 1,200 nits peak brightness when playing HDR content. The big change this year is 120 Hz ProMotion. So if you go into settings and maybe just scroll, this shows you the smoothness, but on this camera, it's hard to show unless I show it in slow motion. So if I switch over to slow motion and we swipe between pages, you can see that the 12 Pro Max looks a little bit more jittery under slow motion, 240 frames per second. In real world use, this is definitely noticeable and something that definitely makes the new display much, much nicer if you've ever used a 120 Hz display. Now, Apple does speed this up and slow it down to 10 Hz to save battery. Now, both phones have PWM to control brightness. However, it's very hard to detect on the 13 Pro Max. Under 240 frames per second slow-mo, you can barely see it. That leads me to believe that the rate is much higher, or the 120 Hz ProMotion display seems to make a difference. So that's definitely something worth noting. Neither of them bother my eyes, but if that's something that bothers your eyes, the 13 Pro Max definitely seems like there's less eye strain overall just in using it in the time that I have. Now, both displays are a little bit different as far as their overall color temperature as well. The 12 Pro Max is a little bit warmer, and as you can see on the display and brightness settings, I have True Tone turned off and Night Shift off. If I turn True Tone on, you can see this even more, where the 12 Pro Max definitely has more of a yellowish tint to it, or a warmer, maybe it's more accurate technically, since similarly accurate displays tend to look a little bit more yellow or warmer, but I think those of you that wanted a cooler display or a more natural looking display that you're used to, the 13 Pro Max definitely seems to be a little bit better in that sense. Now, the battery life is different between both of them. With the iPhone 12 Pro Max, you're going to get good battery, usually between 8 to 12 hours of screen on time, depending on who you ask. But on the 13 Pro Max, it's even greater. You have a 4,352 milliamp hour battery compared to iPhone 12 Pro Max's 3,687 milliamp hour battery. It's good for about 2.5 hours of additional usage, according to Apple, and also it supports up to 28 hours of playback compared to 20 hours last year in Apple's tests. So it's a big jump, almost a third better battery life in many tests, and using it over the past few days, I can show you my battery compared to maybe the 12 Pro Max since I've switched from them. And you can see here with about 40% usage on the 13 Pro Max, I had 4 hours and 6 minutes of screen on time, 3 hours and 23 minutes of screen off time. Where on the last day I used the 12 Pro Max, I had 2 hours and 35 minutes of screen on time and 5 hours and 50 minutes of screen off time, and used 50% of my battery. I've noticed a significant increase, and I was even using it for 4K video. So it seems to really do much, much better with battery. Now, both phones will fast charge up to about 50% in 30 minutes. However, due to the larger battery of the 13 Pro Max, Apple says it charges to 50% in 35 minutes. And since Apple doesn't include a charger in the box, that's where our channel partner Anker comes into play if you need to pick up a charger for yourself. This is the Anker Nano Pro, and it has Power IQ 3.0 that will work flawlessly with your new iPhone or other devices. It's 45% smaller or so than the Apple stock charger, but it charges at 20 watts and up to 50% in that 25 to 30 minute time frame. It also uses their patented Active Shield to monitor the temperature so the phone doesn't get too hot, and it adjusts current to make sure the phone is always at the optimal temperature. And it also comes in 4 different colors: Glacier Blue, Cool Lavender, Arctic White, and Black Ice. Thanks to them for sponsoring this video. Check out Anker Nano Pro. I'll link it in the description below. Now, as far as MagSafe, they both support MagSafe, so you won't have any difference there as far as charging speed. They'll both work with MagSafe, just like last year. No difference there whatsoever. Now, in the iPhone 12 Pro Max, we have Apple's A14 Bionic CPU with 6 GB of RAM. In the new iPhone 13 Pro Max, we have the new A15 Bionic, also with 6 GB of RAM. But it has a new 6-core CPU with 2 performance and 4 efficiency cores, a new 5-core GPU, and a new 16-core neural engine that Apple says is the fastest processor or chip ever in a smartphone. So it should be pretty fast. Now, the problem is both of these are so fast that it's really hard to show the difference. So I wanted to try and export a 4K video just to see if there's any difference there. I don't suspect there will be much, but I thought we'd try it out either way. And as far as doing just different tasks, everything is going to feel about the same. Everything from launching apps is going to be similar to just doing daily tasks. Launching the camera, you'll see, is very similar. It's going to just depend on what you're doing, and it's really hard to push these processors to a point where it's using the entire CPU. So let's go ahead and go into iMovie, where I have a movie ready to export. So we'll go over to iMovie here. Now, I've imported a movie into iMovie. It's something I recorded some time ago about an iOS update, and it's the exact same video. So it's got the same title here, and if we go all the way to the end, you can see that it's 3 minutes and 46 seconds long. So it's the same video, and we'll see how fast we can export it. So I'll move these over, and We'll bring in a phone for a stopwatch, and let's go ahead and hit done. Then we'll hit the share button, and then we'll hit save video. So we'll hit save and start at the same time. Save, save, and start. And let's see how long this takes. So I'll speed this up so you don't have to wait. So you can see they were very, very close, within 1 second or maybe half a second of one another. It's very hard to see any difference between the two with real-world use because the processors are so fast in both that it's just difficult to tell the difference. Maybe in some augmented reality situations you may see some slight speed differences, but in general, the processor is just incredibly fast. However, it also is more power efficient, leading to that additional battery life that you get in the 13 Pro Max that I mentioned before. Now, as far as the cameras go, the cameras are identical on the front of the phone. So they're no different in any way except for the placement of them together. So you can see that the camera is on the far left on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and it's on the right on the 12 Pro Max. So they're just in different locations, but they have the exact same capability. They're both 12 megapixel cameras, both can record 4K 60 HDR. So they're identical in every way when it comes to that. However, the rear cameras are where it's much different. Apple has completely upgraded the camera system in the rear of the iPhone. The first thing you may already notice is the size of the camera bump is larger. They've included sensor shift stabilization on more cameras and also updated all of the sensors so that they capture more light. They've also given autofocus to the ultra-wide camera, so it should be much better overall. And of course, we'll be testing that in a moment. But as far as the capabilities of them, they're very similar. However, in the settings, you do get a couple additional things that you don't get on the 12 Pro Max. So if we go into the camera settings, we now have a new cinematic mode, and you can see it says cinematic video. And what this allows us to do is have basically a built-in focus puller. It's in HDR, only at 1080p, but what it allows us to do is shift focus, maybe when we're recording two people. It blurs the background, sort of like a portrait mode for video, and when you look away, it will focus on the person behind you. When you look back, it will focus back on you, and you can control this after the fact. That's something you will not get in the 12 Pro Max. Another thing you don't get is photo styles. So if you go into your photos, within your photos, press the little arrow. Now you have a new icon for photo styles. And what this allows you to do is change the overall style that you don't have with the 12 Pro Max. So maybe you don't like Apple's typical style. You want it to be a little bit more contrasty or vibrant, or maybe a little warmer or a little cooler. You can fully adjust this and it will stay locked into the camera settings. So every time you take a photo, it will stay this way. You can adjust the tone and you can adjust the warmth, and you can change this for every single photo, or you can just leave it alone, dial it in how you like and leave it be and just snap a photo, and it will keep that baked into the photo all the time. There's this button in the upper right, again, that lets you quickly access them. And that's something new in the 13 Pro Max only. The 12 Pro Max will not be getting that. Also in the future, or maybe by the time you're watching this video, we'll also have Apple ProRes built into video. That's a high quality ProRes format that is very easy to edit on, say, a Mac or computer. It's pretty standard across the camera industry, and it takes up a huge amount of storage. So you can do 4K 30 with ProRes, but only 1080p if you have the 128 gigabyte model of the 13 Pro Max or 13 Pro or any of those phones. Now, as far as the cameras on the back, we have all new sensors, like I said, and new lenses as well. So Apple's changed them up a little bit. So on the 12 Pro Max, we have 12 megapixel cameras, and we have an ultra wide f2.4, a wide f1.6, and a telephoto f2.2. However, on the 13 Pro Max, they've updated this quite a bit. Not only is there larger sensors, we have a telephoto f2.8, a wide f1.5, and an ultra-wide f1.8. But now we can go up to 3 times optical zoom and also 6 times sort of optical zoom range, they say, with digital zoom up to 15 times. So they've updated that. They've also given us a macro mode as you get close to different subjects. So when you're close to different subjects with your lenses, it will switch to a macro mode, and I can show you that here, just the switch, and then I'll show you some examples later on. But as I get closer to the 12 Pro Max, you'll see it sort of switches right there. So it jumps between a macro mode as we get closer and closer and closer, and it switches between those modes and jumps back. And you can capture up to very close images. Now you can sort of get away with that with the telephoto zoom lens on the 12 Pro Max, but it's still not as close. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment. But as far as anything else with the cameras, they're all the same, but there's better night, low light pickup and more. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the cameras are capable of. So now I'm recording with the iPhone 13 Pro Max with the forward-facing camera using cinematic mode and on the 12 Pro Max using 4K video. Now I'm upscaling the cinematic mode since it only records in 1080p 30, but it gives you an idea of what it can do with the portrait mode overall. And also the microphone from the 13 Pro Max versus the 12 Pro Max. The microphones have always been pretty good, but this just gives you a general idea of what they're like if you're recording from the forward-facing camera, whether it be on the 12 Pro Max or on the 13 Pro Max, where I would expect it to be about the same for both phones. Now, when it comes to the overall connectivity of iPhone 13 Pro Max compared to 12 Pro Max, there's not really much difference as far as Wi-Fi and Bluetooth go. So they both have Wi-Fi 6, 802.11 AB, GN, AC, and AX, as well as Bluetooth 5.0. However, on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, we do have better support for 5G in different places around the world, with additional models that support more bands. However, the millimeter wave antenna is not going to be used in too many more countries until that's more widely supported. But it is available in more countries overall, so you'll have sub-6 bands and more. So you should have better support. There's about 5 different models around the world for the new phones, so based on where you live, it could have those different frequency bands. But it will make a difference. They're both Qualcomm modems this year, and I would not expect too much of a difference as far as overall connectivity since they're basically the same. Now, the speakers are a little bit different as far as where they're located this year. On the 13 Pro Max, they've put it at the top. On the 12 Pro Max, it's in the middle of the notch. The bottom speakers are identical in every way, and I wanted to have you hear them to see if you can hear any difference between them. So far, they seem very similar to me, but let me move my microphone so you can hear. So I've opened YouTube to one of my comparison videos where I have different camera comparisons. So let me hit play on the 12 Pro Max first so you can hear it, and then we'll switch to the 13 Pro Max. So as far as the speakers go, I don't think you really could hear too much of a difference. They both sound clear at the highest volumes. Maybe the 13 Pro Max goes a little bit louder, but I don't think you really could notice that easily, as it seems very, very similar to me. Now, as far as anything else, well, they both have the same IP rating, IP68, 6 meters up to 30 minutes, and that's about it for the differences. With this year's phones, the major difference is the 120 Hertz ProMotion, the slightly smaller notch, the larger battery, and the cameras. So if those things matter most to you, then it's worth an update for you from the 12 Pro Max to the 13 Pro Max. However, if they don't matter at all, well, the 12 Pro Max is great, and I would just hang on to it. In fact, for many people, it's not going to be worth upgrading. However, if you're coming from an older phone, an 11 Pro Max to maybe a 13 Pro Max, that may be worth it to you with that additional battery life, since the 12 Pro Max didn't seem to have the same battery life as last year's or the previous year's model with the 11 Pro Max. But the 13 Pro Max even improves on that, now having the best battery of just about any phone out there. So I would definitely recommend checking out both of the phones. If you can get a discount on the 12 Pro Max, it may be worth it to pick one up. But right now, the 13 Pro Max is the latest and greatest and is really great when it comes to the cameras and low light. But let me know what you think about them in the comments below. And will you be upgrading from a 12 Pro Max to a 13 Pro Max, or maybe another phone to the 13 Pro Max? Or are you going to upgrade to maybe even an older phone? Whatever works best for you. There's a ton of different options out there, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on the wallpaper that's in this video, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.